Have you ever dreamed of something so deeply that it felt like your entire life was building toward that one perfect moment? For me, that dream was becoming a mother. I'd spent years imagining the day I'd see those two pink lines on a pregnancy test, the day I'd hold my baby in my arms and feel like my heart was finally whole. But what happens when the dream you've clung to for so long turns into a nightmare you never saw coming? That's my story, a tale of longing, love, and a devastating truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about myself and the people I trusted most. Stick with me, because this isn't just about a pregnancy gone wrong. It's about how the pursuit of happiness can lead you straight into heartbreak. I'm Emily, a 32-year-old woman from a small coastal town in Oregon called Seaview, where the ocean's roar is a constant soundtrack to life, and the salty air clings to your skin like a second layer. I've always been a planner, someone who maps out every step of the journey before taking the first one. But no amount of planning could have prepared me for the roller coaster of emotions that came with my long-awaited pregnancy. As I sit here now, staring out at the gray waves crashing against the shore, I'm still trying to piece together how something so beautiful could unravel into so much pain. If you've ever had a dream turn sour, or felt like the ground beneath you disappeared just when you thought you'd found solid footing, then you'll understand why I need to share this. Let's dive into the mess of my life, and maybe together, we can make sense of it. Growing up in Seaview, life was simple but not always easy. My parents ran a small diner near the pier, serving greasy burgers and milkshakes to tourists and locals alike. I spent my childhood wiping down sticky tables and dreaming of a bigger world beyond the endless horizon of the Pacific. But more than anything, I dreamed of a family of my own. Maybe it was because my parents were always so busy with the diner that I often felt like an afterthought, or maybe it was just wired into me, but I craved the kind of love and connection that comes with being a mom. I'd lie awake at night as a teenager, imagining lullabies I'd sing, the tiny hands I'd hold, the laughter that would fill a home I'd build from scratch. Fast forward to my late 20s, and I thought I was on my way to making that dream real. I'd moved to Portland for college, studied marketing, and landed a decent job at a local firm. That's where I met Ryan, a graphic designer with a quiet charm and a smile that could light up even my darkest days. He wasn't the loud, outgoing type you'd notice in a crowded room, but there was a steadiness to him, a kind of calm that made me feel safe. We bonded over late-night pizza runs during crunch times at work, and before long, we were inseparable. 3 years into our relationship, we got married in a small ceremony on the beach back in Seaview, with the ocean as our witness and just a handful of family and friends cheering us on. It felt like the start of everything I'd ever wanted. But as the years ticked by, one piece of the puzzle remained stubbornly out of reach: a baby. We started trying right after the wedding, full of hope and excitement. Every month, I'd buy a pregnancy test, my heart pounding as I waited for the result, only to feel it sink when it came back negative. At first, Ryan and I would laugh it off, saying, "Next month will be the one." And we'd dive into planning, picking out nursery colors, debating names, dreaming of a little boy with his eyes or a girl with my stubborn streak. But as months turned into years, the laughter faded. Each negative test felt like a personal failure, a silent accusation that I wasn't enough. I started to dread those moments in the bathroom, staring at a single line that seemed to mock every hope I'd ever had. Ryan was patient, or at least he tried to be. He'd hold me when I cried, whispering that it would happen when the time was right, that we had each other no matter what. But I could see the strain in his eyes, the way he'd sometimes stare off into space when he thought I wasn't looking. We went to doctors, endured countless tests, and heard the same frustrating words over and over. "There's no clear reason why you're not conceiving. Just keep trying." I felt like my body was betraying me, like it was holding my deepest desire just out of reach for no reason at all. We considered IVF, but the cost was staggering, and with my job cutting hours and Ryan freelancing, we couldn't swing it. So, we kept trying the old-fashioned way, month after month, hope dwindling with every passing cycle. By the time I turned 31, I was a shell of the woman I used to be. The obsession with getting pregnant had taken over everything. I tracked my cycle with military precision, scheduled intimacy like it was a business meeting, and read every article and forum post I could find on fertility. I stopped going out with friends because I couldn't bear their pitying looks or their casual announcements of their own pregnancies. I even distanced myself from my sister, Claire, who had 2 kids and couldn't understand why I wasn't just relaxing about it. Ryan and I fought more, too. Small, petty arguments over nothing, but really, they were about everything. The unspoken tension of our shared disappointment hung over us like a storm cloud, ready to burst at any moment. Then, one rainy April morning, everything changed. I was late, later than I'd ever been. My hands shook as I took the test, not daring to hope after so many letdowns. I set it on the bathroom counter and paced the tiny apartment, counting down the minutes. When I finally looked, there they were, 2 pink lines, faint but undeniable. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, the world stopped. I sank to the floor, clutching the test, tears streaming down my face. It was happening. After all the pain, all the waiting, I was pregnant. I couldn't wait to tell Ryan, imagining his face lighting up, The way we'd collapse into each other's arms and cry together, all the hurt of the past melting away. When Ryan got home from a client meeting, I practically tackled him at the door, waving the test like a victory flag. His reaction wasn't what I expected. He smiled, sure, and hugged me, but there was a hesitation in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't place. I chalked it up to shock. After all, we'd been through so much. Maybe he just needed time to process it. That night, we lay in bed, my hand resting on my still flat stomach, and I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. I whispered to the tiny life inside me, promising to be the best mom I could be, to give them everything I'd ever dreamed of. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. The early weeks of pregnancy were a blur of cautious joy. I was terrified of something going wrong, so I followed every rule in the book. No caffeine, no heavy lifting, prenatal vitamins, every day. I downloaded apps to track the baby's growth, marveling at descriptions of how they were the size of a poppy seed, then a blueberry. Ryan seemed to warm up slowly, joining me for the first ultrasound where we saw a tiny flickering heartbeat on the screen. I cried again, squeezing his hand, feeling like we were finally on the same page. We started planning again, more seriously this time, turning the spare room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow, debating whether to find out the gender or keep it a surprise. I felt like I was floating, like every sacrifice, every tear, had led to this perfect moment. But beneath the surface, something felt off. Ryan was supportive in all the right ways, going to appointments, helping with chores, even cooking dinner when I was too tired. But there was a distance in him, a quietness that wasn't just his usual reserved nature. I'd catch him staring at his phone late at night, quickly locking the screen when I walked into the room. He'd get calls he'd step outside to take, mumbling that it was just work when I asked. I told myself I was being paranoid, that pregnancy hormones were making me overthink every little thing. After all, we'd been through so much. Maybe he was just processing his own fears about becoming a dad. I pushed the doubts down, focusing on the baby, on the future I'd dreamed of for so long. As my belly grew, so did the whispers of unease. By the second trimester, I was showing, and the reality of motherhood felt more tangible every day. I'd sit on the couch, rubbing my bump, talking to the baby about the life we'd have, trips to Seaview to see the ocean, bedtime stories, first steps. But Ryan's detachment grew more noticeable. He'd come home late more often, claiming client deadlines, but I'd smell a faint trace of perfume on his jacket, a scent that wasn't mine. My heart would race, but I'd silence the thoughts, telling myself I was imagining things. I didn't want to ruin this precious time with baseless accusations. I needed to believe we were okay, that our family was the priority. Then came the day that shattered everything. I was 20 weeks along, halfway through the pregnancy, when I got a call from my sister, Claire. She sounded hesitant, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite read. She asked if I was sitting down, and my stomach dropped. I knew something was wrong before she even spoke. She told me she'd seen Ryan at a cafe in downtown Portland, a place we never went to together. He wasn't alone. He was with a woman, someone Claire didn't recognize, someone who looked too comfortable with him, laughing and touching his arm in a way that wasn't just friendly. Claire didn't want to jump to conclusions, but she felt I needed to know. Her words hit me like a punch, stealing the air from my lungs. I mumbled a thanks and hung up, my hands trembling as I sat there, the world spinning around me. I didn't confront Ryan right away. I couldn't. I was too afraid of what I'd hear, too afraid of losing the fragile happiness I'd finally found. Instead, I stewed in silence, replaying every odd moment, every late night, every locked phone screen. I felt like a fool for ignoring the signs, for letting my desperation for a perfect family blind me to the truth. That night, when Ryan came home, I watched him closely, searching his face for guilt, for anything that would confirm or deny what Claire had seen. He acted normal, asking about my day, kissing my forehead, but I could barely respond. My mind was a storm of questions, each one sharper than the last. Was he cheating? Had he been lying to me all this time? And if he was, what did that mean for our baby, for the future I'd pinned every hope on? The next few days were torture. I wrestled with whether to ask him, to risk blowing up our lives when I was already so vulnerable. I was carrying our child, for God's sake. How could I handle a confrontation that might end everything? But the not knowing was worse. So, one evening, after he'd settled on the couch with a beer, I took a deep breath and asked. I didn't mention Claire's call. I just said I'd noticed he'd been distant, that I felt like something was wrong. I asked if there was anything he needed to tell me. His face changed in an instant. Pale, tense, his eyes darting away from mine. That look told me everything before he even opened his mouth. My heart sank to the floor. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. He admitted there was someone else, a coworker named Lauren, someone he'd met through a project months ago. He swore it hadn't started as anything serious, just late-night talks after work, a connection he hadn't expected. But it had grown into more, into something he couldn't stop even though he knew it was wrong. He said he'd been trying to end it, especially since I got pregnant, but he hadn't yet. Every word was a dagger, slicing through the life I thought we had. I sat there, numb, my hands instinctively cradling my bump as if to protect the baby from the pain tearing through me. I didn't cry, not then. I just felt empty, like the ground had vanished beneath me, and I was falling with nowhere to land. Ryan begged for forgiveness, saying he loved me, that he wanted our family, that he'd made a terrible mistake. But how could I believe him? How could I trust anything he said when he'd been living a double life right under my nose? I told him I needed space, that I couldn't look at him without feeling sick. He moved into the spare room that night, the same room we'd painted yellow for the nursery, and the irony of it burned. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby kick inside me, a reminder of the dream that was now tainted with betrayal. I wondered if I could raise this child alone, if I was strong enough to walk away, or if I owed it to the baby to try and salvage what was left of us. The weeks that followed were a haze of heartbreak and indecision. Ryan cut ties with Lauren, or so he claimed, showing me texts where he told her it was over. He went to therapy on his own, trying to figure out why he'd strayed, and begged me to join him for couples counseling. I agreed, not because I was ready to forgive, but because I felt lost, like I needed someone to help me navigate the wreckage. In those sessions, I poured out my anger, my hurt, my fear that I'd never trust again. Ryan listened, sometimes in tears, promising to do whatever it took to rebuild what he'd broken. But every promise felt hollow. I couldn't shake the image of him with her, the thought of them laughing while I was at home, dreaming of our future. Pregnancy, which I'd once seen as my greatest joy, became a source of unbearable conflict. Every kick, every ultrasound, was a bittersweet reminder of what I'd lost. I loved this baby with every fiber of my being, but I hated the circumstances surrounding their arrival. I'd sit by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, and think back to my childhood in Seaview, to the simplicity of those days before life got so complicated. I remembered my mom's tired smile as she flipped burgers at the diner, my dad's gruff voice calling me to help with the dishes. They weren't perfect parents, but they stayed together through thick and thin. Could I do the same? Should I, for the sake of my child? I also thought about the kind of mother I wanted to be. I didn't want my baby to grow up in a home filled with resentment, sensing the tension between their parents even if they couldn't name it. But I also didn't want to give up on the family I'd fought so hard to create. I wrestled with these questions endlessly, my heart torn between the love I still felt for Ryan, buried beneath layers of pain, and the need to protect myself and my child from further hurt. I started journaling, writing letters to my unborn baby, promising to shield them from the chaos, to give them a life full of love even if I didn't know what that looked like yet. As my due date approached, I made small steps toward clarity, though not resolution. I told Ryan we'd live together for now, for the baby's sake, but I wasn't ready to commit to reconciliation. He accepted that, moving back into our bedroom, but sleeping on an air mattress on the floor, a physical symbol of the distance between us. I focused on preparing for motherhood, setting up the crib, folding tiny onesies, trying to find joy in the little things even as my heart ached. I went back to Seaview for a weekend, walking the beach alone, letting the ocean's rhythm soothe my frayed nerves. I stood at the water's edge, feeling the cold waves lap at my feet, and cried for the dream I'd lost, but also for the strength I knew I had to find. Now, as I sit here at 38 weeks pregnant, waiting for the moment my baby arrives, I'm still at a crossroads. The nursery is ready, the hospital bag is packed, and Ryan is trying, really trying, to be the partner I need. There are moments when I see glimpses of the man I fell in love with, like when he rubs my swollen feet without being asked, or when he talks to my belly, promising our child the world. But there are also moments when the pain resurfaces, sharp and unrelenting, reminding me of the trust he shattered. I don't know if I can forgive him, or if forgiveness even matters when the hurt runs this deep. I don't know if staying together is the right choice, or if walking away would be braver. To anyone listening, I'm reaching out with a heavy heart, searching for perspective. How do you rebuild trust when it feels like the foundation is gone? Should I stay with Ryan, fight for the family I've always wanted, even if it means living with the shadow over us? Or should I start over, raise my baby on my own, and risk the loneliness that comes with it? And how do I protect my child from the pain of a broken home, whether we stay together or not? I'm about to become a mother, a role I've dreamed of my whole life, but I've never felt more uncertain. I want to believe there's hope, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, but I'm not sure where to find it. What would you do in my place? How do you move forward when the dream you've held onto for so long feels like it's slipping through your fingers? I'm ready to face whatever comes next, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as I step into this unknown future, one kick at a time.